Hello, and welcome to our Integral Love Relationship Web Jam. My name is Martin Utschig, and I'm the author of Integral Relationships, a Manual for Men, and my new book, Sex, Purpose, Love, Couples in Integral Relationships Creating a Better World. Today, we will explore what is an integral love relationship. And basically what we will do is bring all the elements that we explored in our previous web jams together into the whole model. So all our web jams basically started with this image, which is the integral love relationship vision. And today I want to go through all the elements in this image. So there is this long sentence that describes what, in my view, an integral love relationship is. It is between equal and opposite partners, which we will cover first, with a shared biological and transcendental purpose, and the same rights and responsibilities in the domestic and public sphere, who love each other, and even more so that which is uniquely co-created between them. So that's a very important part. In all four quadrants, at a level of all seven chakras, by balancing and harmonizing their healthy feminine and masculine polarities. And couples who do that can move from what I call asymmetrical transactional love relationships to symmetrical transcendental integral love relationships. So we start with number one, equal and opposite partners. What do I mean with that? And we go right to the personality matrix, and everything we're going to discuss today, and what I will share today, I want you to feel in your body. So I will always make a reference to you as a human being can have a first-hand experience of all these elements. Everything you bring to the table in an integral love relationship, you can feel in your body today. And of course, all the time when you bring the awareness to it. The first idea is that you're at the same level of consciousness development, which is shown in the left side of this personality matrix. And so if we go all the way back to our earliest memories, we were very dependent on being supported by our parents or caretakers for our survival. And also from an evolutionary human perspective, in an archaic stage, humans were in a constant struggle for survival. And so that's the infrared stage at the very bottom, number one, which we can feel when we feel in a very dangerous situation or have some health issues or just feel threatened and afraid of our life, and it's all about life and death, basically. Then the next stage emerged or is alive in us, in parts of us, when we learned language, were very little, and we had magical beliefs around what the world around us means and what certain things means. And we also felt we had certain superpowers like cartoon characters and things like that. We believed in tales and stories, and we lived in a magical, childish world. And of course, some parts still get carried into our adult life where we have certain magical beliefs around how things work or what certain events mean to us. And the way we interpret them are sometimes not from a rational, objective level, but just from a magical make-believe level. Like I have this old thing that is so deeply embedded in my mind that there's a German saying, Katze zur Linken, das Glück wird dir winken, Katze zur Rechten, das Glück wird dir fechten, which means a cat on the left side will bring luck and a cat on the right side will bring misfortune. So whenever I see a cat, that pops into my mind, oh, is the cat on the left side or the right side? And of course, I could turn around and the cat would be on the other side. So but that's just one little example where this still lives in me. The next level that emerges in us, and you probably have a memory of that, is when you felt you wanted to break free from your family environment. You wanted to assert yourself. You were developing more of a sense of self. You know, you could say no and yes. As a child, you could rebel. And also later in young adult life or late adolescence, you may also have broken free from your home and from the restrictions of the family surroundings and family environment. So that's the egocentric stage, which is a very important developmental stage that I know from workshops. Often people feel that they never really developed a healthy sense of that they could assert themselves powerfully. And of course, we also have the pathological sides of all of these stages, that if somebody becomes overly egocentric and self-absorbed. The next stage that emerged for most people and that emerged in human history is what we call the mythic stage, where we followed some rules, some roles, where we thought in right and wrong. And this is usually when we go to school or learn a profession or go to the military or join a church or join an organization that has rules. And it really helps us to get out of that egocentric, self-absorbed stage 3 and put ourselves into the service of others or a higher power or something outside of ourselves. As we know, as we go up this ladder or this spiral, you know, there's always this being more focused on the self or being more focused on others, on the outside. The next is the rational stage, stage 5. And that's where we started to question the authorities that we were following before and the rules and the roles and what's right and wrong. You know, there was this like, who says so? Where is the proof? Where is the evidence? And again, instead of serving others in a higher power, there is more a shift on like, I want to pursue a good life. I want to win. I want to be successful. I want to be educated. So it's our self, the good life, pursuing goals, strategies. So that's in the 5th stage, and probably all callers and people who watch this have a memory when they enter this stage, or some people may still be in that stage 5. So in American and in all Western societies, most people are in stage 4 and stage 5. So it's like a bell curve where, you know, few people are in the magic and archaic and egocentric stage. A lot of people are in the mythic and rational stage, and then the higher stages, there are fewer people in the higher stages. So stage 6 emerges when we questioned all these rational thoughts and realize that a lot of these ideas are constructed through culture and how we look at the world, and that everybody looks at the world in a different way. That's why we call that a pluralistic stage, that everything is relative. Everybody creates their own reality, not necessarily in a physical sense, but how we interpret what we perceive through our senses. And we realize that this is culturally conditioned through our language, through our upbringing, to our thinking. So if we change our thinking, we change our reality. It's also a stage where we go from our head more into our hearts, connect with our feelings, connect with our needs. There is an idea that all humans are equal, that all humans have the same needs and desires. They want to be loved. They want to be cared for. So it is a very caring stage. It's a very embodied stage. It's a stage that also connects with Earth and with all living things. And so it's a very holistic stage. And again, more focused outwardly around our surroundings, other human beings, love, and things like that. Then the next stage that emerged is what we call the integral stage. And it's a little unfortunate in a way that we call it integral, because as we will see later, I know now that people can have an integral relationship at any level. And even though we call it integral relationship, it can be at a pluralistic, at a rational, at a mythic, at an egocentric, and even on a magical level. And all these stages all live inside of us. And so we're not constantly just at one level, and I will say a little bit more about that shortly. So the integral level really represents a paradigm shift. We call that often second tier. So the first 6 stages we call first tier. The higher stages we call second tier. And the integral level is the first level where we see all these previous levels. So we can connect with people and relate to and with people at all these previous levels by speaking their language, by understanding their worldview, by meeting them where they are. And so that was the idea in my first book, Integral Relationships, that men can basically learn to meet women at whatever stage and state and energy they're in by understanding this personality matrix. And then the 8th level that we have here, the turquoise transpersonal level, is when there is more of an embodiment of all these previous stages. So integral can sometimes be somewhat removed and be sort of like a passive observer and meeting other people where they are, but not revealing very much of itself. And so it can be seen as arrogant and manipulative. And the turquoise stage, the transpersonal stage, we break out of that. It becomes also more evolutionary. We become more involved. Terry Patton just wrote a book about activism. So we just become more embodied again. We're not only talking about these stages and understanding them, but embodying them. And we become more active in kind of like a hands-on way, and which also opens, of course, the door to a whole different quality of relationships. So the main point here that I'm making is with equal partner, I mean that a partner is at our level of consciousness. And I'm just going to switch to the next slide real quick and then come back to the previous one. So one interesting observation that has been confirmed all over the world in workshops and me talking to literally thousands of people is that females and feminine people have a tendency to grow through these stages. We saw here on the left side, like the flow of a river. And so once somebody has grown to the red or amber or orange stage, you know, some people have more a tendency of fluently going up and down these levels. While males and masculine people, they have more a tendency like growing like the banks of the river, which we call transcend, going beyond the previous stage, and exclude. So they operate more from the highest level that they have reached. So that becomes really interesting. Let's say somebody, a woman or a feminine person is at a green level, and they have more a tendency, like in the middle of that image of what I call transcending and including, and they're having needs up and down this ladder of consciousness or the spiral, as it sometimes is called. And if they date a more masculine person who's very fixated on the green level, then they feel met by their partner as an equal when they're in their green pluralistic energy. But when they float to one of the earlier levels, which can be in a healthy or in an unhealthy way, then they feel unmet by their partner. And so once people move into the teal stage, then of course, let's say a man is integral and is in the teal stage, then he can meet the woman, no matter, or the feminine person, which is usually the woman, at a green, orange, amber, red, magenta level. So this is a very important image to remember, and that comes originally from David Data about feminine masculine polarities, that the masculine is more like the banks of the river and the feminine is more like the flow of the river. And I took that a level further by really looking how females develop differently from males, and seeing that again, that women are or feminine people are more in a flow up and down, while males are more stuck at whatever level they are. And that has to do historically, I think, because women were more engaged in child rearing, and obviously children are born at level 1 and then until about 20 or so grow through the stages that their culture are offering them. So let's say if it's a mythic culture, it's very hard to grow beyond the mythic level. And females tend to have much more patience and more empathy and more understanding for guiding children through that process, while fathers tend more to be in the public sphere, as we will see later, and come from, so like the rules, and here are the rules and the roles, and they're of course enforced from the highest level that a father in the relationship usually has attained. So if the father is at a rational level, he will more expect his children to become as quickly as possible rational, while the female tends to be more accommodating and meet the child where it is. And I'm always checking the chat to see if somebody has a question or a comment. So if we go to the right now, we see these lines, these swirls, and these represent the feminine masculine polarities, and I will come back to that in a moment. But for now, we can just say in first tier consciousness, there is a tendency of females moving to their feminine side as they grow through these stages, and males tend to go to their masculine side. And then in the pluralistic green stage, there is a swing of males over to their feminine side, and females have already swung over to their masculine side, typically during the rational stage, where they claim their feminine power and feel they want to be equals with men, which is of course a very good thing. And then, you know, they even swing often further to their masculine side in the green stage. So we have this role reversal. And then in second tier, males and females then can usually embody healthy feminine and masculine polarities. But we get to that in a moment. And then in the next column, we see horizontal stages. There are state stages called in integral theory. And there we have developmental lines for spiritual development, sexual development, and anima animus complex development. And just briefly, and maybe that warrants another lecture type session, there's 5 state stages of spiritual development, from becoming aware of that we are not the material objects and we're not our physical body, but we are the witness of material objects in the physical body. So that would be called the gross level, becoming spiritually aware and not attached or disidentified from material objects in the physical body. Stage 2 would be that we can observe our mind, that we realize we are not our thoughts. It's more like a radio station playing in our head. The third stage is that we also realize that we're not our experience, our feelings. You know, we're not our intuitions. And we are the witness. We can witness our intuitions, our feelings, our experience, just as we can witness our thoughts and how we can witness our body. And then in stage 4 is what's called the pure witness. This is where the subject and the object that collapse and become one, basically. Right? So when we observe our thoughts, right, there is still a conscious witness and there is the thought. If we observe our feelings, our emotions, our experiences, there is still a witness that is aware of these feelings, emotions, intuitions. And then if we go a step further, we can get into the stage where there is no more duality or split between the subject and the object. And then the 5th stage is the non-dual stage, where emptiness and form are equally real and unreal. Same thing or similar thing with sexual development, which is below spiritual development, where we go from stages of repressed sexuality to the fucking stage, to the having sex stage, to the making love stage, to the transcendental sex, which is then tantric or transcendental sexual experiences, sacred sexuality. And at the bottom of these horizontal lines is the anima-animus complex, which goes for females from males as alien outsiders to wanting males to give them approval, to males who are an equal partner in a marriage, to the fourth stage is where they want to claim their females their own authority, becoming independent of males. And the fifth stage, seeing males as an equal and opposite partner, not only as a husband with separate gender roles as in stage 3, but really being equal and opposite. And for males, the animus stage goes from objectifying women, or the first stage is wanting all women to mother them, to be a mother substitute. The second stage is seeing all women as a sex object. The third stage is wanting to be a husband, father, patriarch, like the king of the family, taking care of a wife and of the children and the family. The fourth stage is which often is often called like a midlife crisis, where men try to find a new way of love that is not dependent on coming from family, and find new ways of defining themselves and feeling appreciated and acknowledged, having that come from a higher power or a deeper inner source and not from the outside world. And the fifth stage again is equal to where females can get to, is that they see women as equal and opposite partners in all respects. So when I say an equal partner, that means that, as I said before, same level of consciousness, and also close or identical in our partner is in the same level of spiritual, sexual, and anima-animus complex development. And then with different, I will come back to different a few times. So we are also attracted to things that are not us, that are different from us. And that on a psychological level, that's often if we have repressed certain qualities in our unconscious, we feel attracted to people who have not repressed these qualities. We feel attracted to people who are in the opposite feminine, masculine polarity, which we will come to next. And we also often feel attracted to people who have a different personality type, which we see on the right side. So there is what I mean with opposite. So we for integral relationship, we need to understand where we want to be equal and similar, which is very attractive, and where we want to be different and opposite, which is also attractive. So if we're too much the same, there is no attraction. But if our worldviews differ too much, then there is no connection, right? So we need to see what creates connection and what creates attraction. And these are different things. So we covered that slide. And so in my book, Integral Relationships, and in the new book, Sex, Purpose, Love, I have this compatibility matrix where we can see if people are at the same level, then that's these fields that go, in the screen horizontally up like that, where we usually have harmonious and functional relationships. And if people are at different stages, then there's short descriptions in here how these relationships then usually look. And if you're interested in more detail, I have a friend in Denmark who has a website called themasculineman.com/compatibility-matrix. And on his website, he did a lot of work. You can click in each of these fields, and then you get a more in-depth description of what we think, how these relationships then look. And of course, sometimes people meet at the same level of consciousness. Let's say that they're in a college or a university. that has a rational focus, and they get together as a couple, and then one of the partners advances to the green level or the integral level, and then this is where people then usually say we grew apart, which really is true, that they not only grew apart horizontally, which a lot of people imagine, but they also grew apart vertically, like in their level of consciousness. Okay, so that was the big part about being equal and opposite. Then the next part is in these sentences with a shared biological and transcendental purpose. And we had already 3 web jams around purpose. So I just repeat it real quickly. And if you missed these other ones and are interested in more detailed information, please go back to the YouTube channel, which will be in the link in the email that you will receive after that web jam. And you can revisit or watch these other videos. But in a nutshell, our biological purpose is to eat, to survive, to reproduce, and to see quality of life. And we share that purpose with all living things. And that is, of course, part of our genetic makeup. It doesn't really require much cognitive intelligence. Our body survives by itself. Our sex drive emerges by itself. This tendency of hedonistic quality of life seeking happens by itself. And obviously we get hungry and we protect ourselves intuitively. It's all in our reptilian brainstem. And so I found that funny that, this guy's going like, what is it all about? But we humans also have what I call a transcendental purpose. Here real quick, and again, survival, procreation, group forming, territorialism, competition, cooperation, quality of life seeking, just for the record. We also have a transcendental purpose, which emerged about 200,000 years ago, when females not only selected for physical qualities and abilities in males, but also selected males who showed empathy, which translates to goodness, who showed cognitive intelligence, which translates to finding better truths, who were creative, artistically creative with language, who could make them laugh, which created beauty, aesthetics, art, and then who were good with their hands, who were practical, who could create things or even organize their tribes and their groups, who could create functionality. And so we have that represented today in morals, in religion, number 1, in science, number 2, and in art, number 3 for beauty, and then in social sciences and sports and everything that has to do with kinesthetics and functionality in number 4. So this is our transcendental purpose. And what's important about our transcendental purpose is that it always creates more goodness, truth, beauty, or functionality, is in service of the well-being of others and in service of our biological purpose, which we showed here. Because otherwise there's a risk that if we just feel sort of like some inner calling or some inner bliss or what makes us feel alive, that it is something that ultimately harms our people around us or humanity, and then ultimately harms ourselves and is not in service of our biological purpose. So I have a huge problem with a lot of people who teach about this, what they call higher or souls or true or evolutionary or cosmic or whatever purpose, right? That there's many words that go in front of purpose that people use, or God's purpose, right? And then they feel this strong urge, like maybe the people from the Islamic State, to kill all infidels, or the Nazis who fell to, to exterminate all Jewish people. And I'm sure, if you're willing to blow yourself up or do these horrible things, there has to be a strong conviction inside of you, and you feel that comes from some deeper or higher place, but it can be totally delusional. And so it's important to me that when we say transcendental purpose, that we can verifiably prove that it is creating more goodness, truth, beauty, and functionality, and that it is in support of our biological purpose and in service of the well-being of others. So these are the criteria. And as I said before, that became genetically encoded in our DNA. So that's at the bottom of the screen. So we all have genetically predisposition capacity for empathy, kinesthetic abilities, intelligence, and creativity, which then, as after gestation, we grew up in our mother's womb, and after we were born, our brain and physical development continued based on these genetic predispositions. And if we were lucky, we were able to develop the skills so we could enact our transcendental purpose. And as I said in one of the previous webcams, in my case, for example, I was not supported in developing my skills that were aligned with my natural talent. So I first developed a lot of skills, which was no fun, and was just not, I didn't feel that I was in the flow of life or that I was living my purpose. And then when I was around 22, 23, I broke out of that and then developed the skills that were more aligned with my purpose. And then, we can then enact one or some of these life purposes, that are shown in the top of the tree. So the reason why I think it makes sense to share a purpose with someone is, as I said before, we have differently preconditioned natural talents for empathy, cognitive intelligence, creativity, and practical talents. So if we have a purpose, let's say in my case, to further the integral relationship vision, it produces the best result if it's based in the highest level of empathy, the highest level of cognitive intelligence, the highest level of creativity, and the highest level of functionality, right? So whatever you do, whatever you want to bring into the world, these four dimensions should be as developed as possible, and we should look at all these four dimensions and act as positively as possible in all of these four dimensions. But nobody has strength in all these four dimensions. So if we get together with someone who shares our overall purpose, whatever that may be, solve global warming or invent a new medicine or create a new social system, or, there's literally thousands of different transcendental purposes, how they get enacted. If we get together with someone who shares that same purpose, but has developed different strengths based on their genetics and the skill development, let's say in that case, in the second line, the first person is medium strong in empathy, stronger in cognitive intelligence, very strong in creativity, and not so strong in practical talents, and gets together with someone who is strong in empathy, not so strong in cognitive intelligence and creativity, but strong in practical talents, then together as a couple, they can achieve a very high level in all of these four areas. And I know for a fact from my own experience and from other couples that I talk to, that this is as attractive as sexual attraction when we find someone who, again, equal and opposite, who has the same transcendental purpose, but has developed different strengths in enacting the transcendental purpose. And so then we can get to this point where a couple both can do what they do well, what the world will pay for, what the world needs, and what they love to do. So Sally said, these are beautiful maps. Thank you. I will find your books. Which book do you suggest I read first? Definitely Sex, Purpose, Love, because it integrates the essential elements of integral relationships, and then it explains all the purpose part and how that leads to love, to transcendental love relationships. Thank you for the question. Okay, same rights and responsibilities. Again, that was part of a previous webcam in more detail, but very briefly, traditionally women had the responsibilities and some rights in the domestic sphere, and males had the power, the rights, and which came from assuming responsibilities in the public sphere. And that led to feminine validity claims to what is true, good, beautiful, and functional, of care, compassion, and relationships and emotions, while for males, what is true, good, beautiful, and functional, specifically in the public sphere, were rights, justice, and autonomy and rationality. And then about 150, 200 years ago, it started, but then with the Industrial Revolution and the female liberation movement, we've seen in the Western world, so that the more evolved that societies become, the more they open up the possibility for women to enter the public sphere. It's very interesting. I think it's in Saudi Arabia, in one of the Arabic countries, where women are now starting to be allowed to drive, for example, and to go to sporting events without a male. So we see how cultures throughout the world are moving more and more to what we mostly experience in the Western world, that women enter the public sphere with the same rights, and then a choice to assume responsibilities. And unfortunately, they often have then to adopt the male validity claims or masculine ideas of rights, justice, and autonomy in order to be successful in the public sphere. So this is not the ideal or my ideal. And at the same time, males, as you see, they didn't enter the domestic sphere at the same time. So women then basically had the responsibilities in the domestic sphere and the public sphere, and males mostly retained their responsibilities and most rights in the public sphere, which, is then under this big umbrella term patriarchy, which will be a topic of one of our next webcams. And then, of course, there are a lot of people became single in that process. So males and females, as individuals, as singles or single parents, had to take on responsibilities, and then also, of course, had all the rights, because rights and responsibilities are intrinsically connected in the domestic sphere and in the public sphere as individuals. But co-creation obviously then broke down even further. And so when we have a shared transcendental purpose, that opens up the possibility, which is really new in human history, in recent human history. We're basically going back where we were in the tribal stage, where it is feasible that males and females had rights and responsibility in the domestic and in the public sphere. And I actually witnessed that as I grew up in a little magical village in Germany, where my grandparents ran the local restaurant and butcher shop, and there were mainly farmers around. I just saw a lot of co-creation of males and females, but specifically with my parents, with my grandparents, because my grandfather was a butcher, and how they both cooked together and, acted together in the domestic sphere and in the public sphere. And that really left a deep impression on me, while my parents, who I lived mostly with, had that kind of relationship, where my mom was, a homemaker all her life, and my dad took care of us and worked hard in the public sphere, and then was taken care of when he came home. So this is the ideal image for me, where in the public and the domestic sphere, males and females can embody feminine and masculine polarities and make validity claims to care, compassion, relationships, feelings, and rights, justice, autonomy, and rationality. So that is the case in both the public and the domestic sphere. The next one is shared in all four quadrants. So we're making good progress here. And again, you can feel into all these 4 dimensions. So you can right now bring your attention to what's alive in yourself right now. So maybe close your eyes for a second and feel inside. Take a deep breath and feel what is alive in you right now. You know, what are your thoughts, your feelings? How does your body inside feel? Right, and maybe you're thinking about now your upbringing, or this is too complicated, or where is he going with that, or there is something alive in you right now. So that's one dimension of 4 dimensions of your being. Then you can bring your attention into your physical body. Right, you could touch your arms or your legs, and can also feel into, are you hungry or sleepy or full, or you know, how do you feel some pain in your body? Are you aware of your toes, your legs, you know, your heart beating, your breathing, your physicality, your physical emotional stage, your hormonal physical stage. So as we say, sometimes you have a relationship with your I, with your inner self, and you have a relationship with your physical body. And then you also have a relationship with others. So you live in a certain culture, you speak a certain language, you have certain belief systems, you have a way of connecting with others. And this is represented by one more quadrant, which we call the Yu Dao Vi quadrant. And so that's your relationship with the interior of other people. You know, how vulnerable are you? How willing are you to reveal yourself? How do you create intimacy with other people? And how do you then, what is your way of seeing, understanding, feeling what's alive in other people? And then there is your social environment. So if you look around yourself, you know, there is most likely a computer screen, and I'm looking out the window. I'm in Sherman Oaks in Los Angeles here, and there's clouds, and there's a house across the street. And so I live in a particular environment. And what's important to understand is that we are not only living in our social environment and in our culture. Our social environment and our culture is also living inside of us. And you become very aware of that. For example, if you travel to another country and people dress differently, and maybe they drive on the other side of the street, they speak a different language, they eat differently, right? And you see all of a sudden how you become a different person by adopting to that different culture, or maybe even rejecting that different culture, right? But the culture will have an impact on you, just as you have an impact on the culture. So a lot of people feel they're disconnected from their culture or their social environment, but they don't understand that, you know, it impacts us just the way as we impact it. And so these are the famous 4 quadrants that Ken Wilber designed. So our relationship with the inner self in the upper left, our relationship with our body in the upper right, our relationship with other people's interior, right? Not their physical body, but what is alive inside of them, which creates intimacy and understanding, or also conflict or disagreements, which we see a lot in politics, and our relationship to nature and our social environment. And specifically the lower quadrants, right? They also live in us just as much as we live in them. And that means when we get together in a love relationship, we bring all these 4 quadrants, these 4 dimensions to the relationship. And an integral relationship, and that's really a central, very important part, is healthy and functional in all of these 4 dimensions. So it's functional in creating, being at the same worldview, having the same spirituality, having the same level of inner complexity or inner awareness, inner psychological health, so that would be the upper left, right, where we bring the same to the table. Then we're physically healthy, our sexuality is healthy, what we eat, how we take care of our body, sleeping patterns, diet and things, exercise. All these things they don't have to be the same, but they're compatible in a way that we have the same lifestyle choices around our physical body. We share the same ideas around money, around our lifestyle of the social in the lower right, and we have the same way of ability to communicate, have empathy, create intimacy. So again, and what we will notice is that when one of these four elements suffers, right, when we become unhealthy in one of these four dimensions, then the relationship, of course, will suffer in that dimension, but eventually all the other three dimensions will also suffer. And so the four quadrants are way more profound than often people realize when they start to study integral theory. Then we have the seven chakras as the next dimension. And the chakras are energy centers that you can also feel right now. And again, what's important to me is not to confuse the seven chakras with the seven levels of consciousness development, because the seven chakras, that's an ancient system. It's about 2,500 years old, comes out of India. And obviously people at the time who developed that system were at best at a mythic level. And so these seven chakras can be alive or are alive at any level of consciousness development. That doesn't mean that everybody is connected or healthy or has actualized these chakras, but it's a potential at every level of consciousness. So at the root, we have our need for providing and survival. And we probably can feel that we're sitting on a chair, we're connected with earth or with a chair, of course, or and the floor and things like that. But it's really the level that supports our livelihood. The second is our sexuality. Again, we can feel into that, our sex organs, this energy in the sacrum. And some people may be contracted there. Some people may be overly attached to it. Again, there is healthy dimensions and unhealthy dimensions. Then our solar plexus, we can feel maybe we have butterflies or we have, some stress, and we feel that in our stomach. But it's also where our power comes from, to exert power and autonomy and independence. Then the heart chakra is obviously where we have feelings, where we care for others. A lot of emotions are there as well, empathy. The fifth chakra is our throat chakra, creativity, self-expression. So I'm very much focused, right now in this moment in my throat chakra, in speaking. Then our sixth chakra is the wisdom, the third eye chakra, where we not only have information and knowledge, but we also know how to apply it in order to serve our transcendental purpose and put it into service of our biological purpose. And then the ground chakra up here is unity, where maybe you feel a connection with everybody on this webinar right now, or you feel a connection with all humanity, or you feel a connection with the whole universe. Everything where you don't feel any separation is in a way where you're in your ground chakra. And males and females obviously share these chakras. And I'm just going to skip that for now. Oh. So I'm not going to skip this. So what we call our cosmic address is basically the combination of these four dimensions, right? Where we can move our energy into the self, into the body, into connecting with others, which right now there is nobody else for me there to directly connect, and our social environment, plus our personality matrix. stages of consciousness, feminine, masculine polarities, and so on and so forth. And this is a rather complex image, but what I do here is that I basically put this on the right side, the personality matrix, or most of it, into, or the levels of consciousness, to be precise, into the quadrants, and integrate the chakras. So you have the four quadrants, you have the developmental levels from archaic to integral in each of the quadrants, because they, what Ken Wilber calls tetra arise, right? So if we grow in our value system, in our consciousness, then usually things in our body change, our social environment changes, and our relationships change. And then at each of these levels, if we look in the upper left quadrant, you know, the archaic level, the magic, the egocentric, the mythic, the rational, and so on and so forth, each level, of course, as we said earlier, not of course, as we said earlier, has the 7 chakras. So I paused there a little bit because that's something to contemplate. It took me a while to figure this one out. And then in this image, and we can go into the details, you see again, on the left side, you see the 7 chakras. And at the top, you see the stages from archaic to integral. And then we have basically different needs and desires based at each level of the chakras, depending on what level of consciousness we are, which is at the top horizontal line from archaic to integral. So that's all in sex, purpose, love. 6 is balancing and harmonizing healthy feminine and masculine polarities. And what's important here is to know that in integral, we see the masculine as ascending, going away from the body, from the earth up into the heavens, and agency, which is autonomy, rights, and justice, and the feminine as communion, connecting with others, and descending, going into the body, into the earth, into fullness. The masculine would be go into emptiness. Feminine descending would go into movement. Masculine would be going into stillness. One would be breathing in, the feminine breathing out, emptying the masculine. And 2 things are important here. One is that males and females have similar, or probably the same, potentially the same capacity to embody feminine and masculine polarity. So we don't equate female with feminine and male with masculine. The second thing is that we cannot be feminine and masculine at the same time. So we're always more in a communal feminine energy, or a agentic, maintaining wholeness, autonomy energy, or we're more in an ascending energy, or more in a descending energy. And the third is that people have healthy and unhealthy feminine and masculine polarities. And I'm not going to read through this whole thing right now, but you can download the PowerPoint presentation after the webinar, and you will get another email with a link to that. So you can look that up, or when you watch the video on YouTube, you can just pause and read through that. But it's important that there is healthy ascending and unhealthy ascending, and so on and so forth. So sometimes people say we need more feminine energy in the world and less masculine energy, but what we really need is more healthy masculine and more healthy feminine, and not in the extreme replace healthy masculine with unhealthy feminine, or even healthy masculine with healthy feminine. We need healthy masculine and feminine qualities in the world, and even more so, or importantly, or to start with, in our love relationships. And so this brings us now to this image where we have the 7 chakras that males and females obviously embody and have these energy centers. And then we're connecting at each chakra in all 4 quadrants, because all 4 quadrants are alive at each chakra. And then inside we see that the stages from very small, from archaic to transpersonal stages. And so in the book, I gave descriptions, that's pretty crazy actually, for each chakra in each of the four quadrants at a pre-rational, a rational, and a post-rational, or a pre-conventional, conventional, post-conventional level. So I didn't go into all the 7 or 8 stages, but I gave so like 3 stages. So that's 4 times 7 times 3 descriptions of how relationships look at each chakra in each quadrant at different levels of consciousness. And then we balance and harmonize these quadrants, what's going on between the couple, through healthy feminine and masculine polarities at each chakra. Right? So this is what the line to the left and right would be communion and agency, and then at the top and the bottom would be ascending and descending. So an integral relationship, no matter at what level of consciousness you are, ideally if you're at the same level of consciousness, looks basically like this, or looks like that. That we bring awareness into each chakra, each quadrant at each chakra, and balance and harmonize feminine, masculine polarities. And this then allows us to move from asymmetrical transactional love relationships. I'm just going to check the comments real quick. Okay, there are a lot of comments, so we're just going to hang out a little bit after the webcam, and I'll just answer these questions then. So we move from asymmetrical transactional love relationships, which are based in the female need for providing and a success object, the male, who provides and is successful, a male who can protect and has power, and a male who is creative, who can make her laugh, who can laugh, who can entertain her. And males have a desire for women who are sexy and sexually available, who care for them, and who are wise. And just a little note, it's been a hard day's night. I work all day to get you money to buy you things. When I'm home, everything seems to be right. When I'm home, feeling you holding me tight. So that shows a little bit this traditional gender role. And when the man comes home, he wants to be taken care of by the woman. Or what Alison Armstrong in her book Making Sense of Men shows is that the left side, we have sexual attraction. So females are attractive, shiny hair, shapely body, sensuality, and sexual energy. And they attract men by being self-confident, authentic, passionate, and receptive. And in the bottom, we see the sexual attraction. Men basically want to have sex. So if a woman gives a man sex, according to Alison Armstrong, he will spend time with her, take care of her. And with take care of her, that's meant in a material sense, right? Not necessarily in an emotional sense. Protect her, contribute to her well-being, make her happy, and fall in love with her. So there we see sort of like these stereotypes of transactional relationships, which then can be mapped onto the chakra. So the female desire is for the first chakra, the third chakra, and the fifth chakra. And the male desire is for the second chakra, sexuality, being taken care of, the fourth chakra, and the female wisdom, the sixth chakra. And then the seventh unity chakra, of course, there is no separation, even though you have to read the book, there are some details there as well. So that then, if we map that onto the chakras like that, we see how this is asymmetrical. So my ability to provide on the left, on the male side, for your sexuality, second chakra, my power, my ability to protect for when I come home, you care for me, fourth chakra in the woman, and then fifth chakra in the male, my self-expression, you know, what I'm doing right now, male-splaining for your wisdom. And I know we're going a little over, so please hang with me if you have the time. And so we get these transactional relationships that I just explained. And in the book, I describe what Hegel found, and then Marx took a level further, is as long as this exchange is equal, right? Let's say you produce a certain value at your work and you get paid according to the value that you provide in Marxism, for example, or in this dialectic, right, where there is an equal exchange, you know, your beauty for my money and my power for you caring for me. I think it's pretty interesting how we see that right now with Trump, you know, and all his female lovers. So we see that exchange there very vividly. As long as this exchange is working, you know, a relationship can work and can be even healthy. But as soon as the relationship breaks down, the exchange breaks down in one direction, then the person who's still delivering the goods, so to speak, becomes the slave, and the other one becomes the master. And some relationships are only based on the first two chakras, some on the first, on the third and the fourth, and the first and second, and some are based on all the seven chakras. But as you can imagine, and we cannot go into more detail here, is when one person stops to deliver the goods, right, that the relationship then falls apart. And so these relationships, as we now know in modernity, are very unstable. So that leads us then to symmetrical transcendental integral love relationships, again, based on a shared purpose, which becomes the new attractor, to move to these transcendental love relationships. And there, the desires are equal. So both partners bring a desire to co-create their livelihood, to create a vibrant sexual life. Power over shifts to power with, so they become what's called a power couple, because they're both powerful in the relationship. Males and females are equally connecting on the heart level, so males are allowed to share their feelings, their vulnerability, and the woman is not freaking out about it and feels that he's becoming too feminine. They're both bringing their full creativity to the table. They both bring wisdom, and they also connect on the higher unity chakra level. And so transcendental desire, you know, what people desire in a relationship, and transcendental love becomes the same. And that then looks here in the book I describe the transcendental love. And again, pause the video if you watched it on YouTube, so you can read these descriptions or download a PDF file. And so now, ta-ta, we are back at our beginning image, and we see how this shared purpose at the top is put in service of the earth, of all people, of the well-being of nature, people, in support of our biological purpose. And then we create intimacy, passion, and commitment, and at a level of all seven chakras, in all four quadrants, by balancing and harmonizing feminine and masculine polarities. And the very important part now is what's shifting when we shift from these asymmetrical relationships, right, where we love our partner for the qualities he or she brings to the table. Right? And so in a transcendental love relationship, we no longer only love our partner, but we love even more so, and that's my definition of love and my experience of love now, what is co-created between two partners. So in an integral love relationship, I repeat it, we're not only love our partner, but even more so what's uniquely co-created between the two of us in all four quadrants at the level of all seven chakras. Have a great weekend. Thank you again, and see you next Saturday. Bye-bye.